Here's a question for you. What do Toy Story, Pride and Prejudice, and John Wick all have in common? The same thing they will hopefully have in common with Final Fantasy XIV's upcoming expansion, Dawntrail. We now have 2 FanFests under our belt and another on the way, with the final FanFest scheduled to be held in Tokyo at the beginning of January. Coming off the heels of Endwalker, a conclusion to a 10-year story arc, Dawntrail has very large shoes to fill if it wants to keep people's attention for the beginning of a new multi-expansion story. Ironically, one of the downsides of people being satisfied with Endwalker's story is that they don't feel like they need to see what happens in Dawntrail. Many people are worried it won't live up to previous expansions since it doesn't have the same strong lead-up going into it. People are already calling it the summer vacation arc and the beach episode, both well known for being heavy on fluff and light on action. So is Dawntrail doomed to be boring? Well, obviously not. But we can definitively say that it won't have the same high stakes as Endwalker. But wait, what do we mean by high stakes? It's a word that's thrown around a lot when talking about storytelling, and there are endless articles out there to teach authors how to raise the stakes in their writing, but it's not always clear what is high stakes. For example, is New York City getting destroyed in the Avengers high stakes? If so, does that mean that the fate of the boy on trial in 12 Angry Men isn't high stakes, since he's only one person compared to the thousands who presumably died in the Avengers climax? To answer this, let's step back and define the words we're using. Stakes in storytelling is the same word we use for gambling or business ventures. It's the level of risk involved in pursuing a certain outcome. When you lose, it's catastrophic. And when you win, you do so with the relief of knowing you dodged a bullet. A high-stakes story, therefore, is one in which the audience can feel the elated relief of disaster averted, or the full weight of failure if the protagonist loses. Stakes are the answer to the question, why should I care? How high the stakes are will inform how strong a character's motivation is, or how dire the risk will be. When we feel like a character or location won't be seriously affected by what is going to happen, we won't care about the outcome, even when people die. Endwalker and Shadowbringers before it had clear high stakes because it was obvious what would be lost if the heroes failed. The world would end. And it's hard to get much higher stakes than that. So how the heck is Dawntrail gonna top that? It's not, and it doesn't need to. Here's why. The term stakes is actually used to talk about 2 very different things as if they were one and the same. So I'm going to give them separate names here and then show you what I mean. The first is global stakes, also known as story stakes. This is when the cost of failure affects many. The second is personal stakes, where the cost of failure affects few or only one very deeply. Put another way, global stakes largely affect the setting itself, while personal stakes affect individual characters. Let me give you 2 examples to illustrate the difference. In Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the Earth gets blown up 15 minutes into the movie. Instead of being treated like a high-stakes moment, despite the huge loss of life, it's played off as comedy. And this works because we, the audience, have not been primed to believe that the destruction of Earth is a big deal in the world of the story. A parallel is drawn between the Vogons blowing up Earth and Arthur's house getting destroyed. More than that, from the first scene of the movie, it is openly hinted that the destruction of Earth is happening soon, and it is unavoidable. However, when we turn to the main character Arthur, we see that the stakes for him personally of losing both his house and the Earth are very high through his reactions to the possibility of these events. We see a stark difference between the way he handles the situation and the reactions of those around him. Everyone else is largely unconcerned about their imminent destruction. When Arthur inevitably loses both, the resulting effect not only drives his motivation for the rest of the film, but gives the audience an avenue to build sympathy with him after seeing the consequences of his failure. Luckily, we have another example that shows the exact opposite. And we're going to use another comedy and another opening scene just to keep it fair. In One Punch Man, the story opens on a city in the process of being destroyed by a rampaging monster. It is not funny. The global stakes are high. There is desolation, frantic government response, dramatic music, and a crying child to really hammer the point home. But when Saitama steps in to save the city, we see that his personal stakes are extremely low. He is constantly frustrated by the fact that he is never in danger of losing. There is no risk for him. The juxtaposition between the global and the personal, the expectation and the reality, is what drives the comedy. Saitama's motivation is in trying to find an opponent worthy enough to make him feel the fear of losing and the rush of victory. Because winning means nothing if it costs nothing. Okay, so what does this have to do with Dawntrail? Well, one of the problems in using the term high stakes is that we kind of default to thinking about global stakes. And for good reason. Focusing on global stakes sets a clear, easily understandable pass-fail scenario that is simple for the author to set up and comfortable for the audience to digest. And when people are mentioning their hesitance about Dawntrail's story, they're talking about global stakes. There is no way that Dawntrail will ever be able to match the global stakes of Endwalker. The bar is far, far too high. So what Dawntrail will have to do is lean much more heavily on the personal stakes to drive the story. This is a good thing though, because the 14 writing team has always done a better job writing smaller scale stories with high personal stakes. Heavensward and Shadowbringers, the two most highly praised expansions, are both self-contained in a single region with high personal stakes for a limited cast of characters. The problem with global stakes is always that it tends to get too big for the writer to contain, or the audience to fully comprehend. And this leads very nicely into my next point. Dawntrail is in a great position to decrease power creep. The Warrior of Light is ridiculously powerful now. We've fought primals and ancient gods and even despair itself. If the writers insist on making the global stakes even higher, which all of these super powerful bosses represent a threat to people on a mass scale, we'll be forced to find even bigger threats to even more people. But raising the global stakes too high will inevitably push against the audience suspension of disbelief as the stakes go outside of the bounds of what they are willing or even able to believe for the sake of the story. I'll give you an example. In Star Wars The Force Awakens, Starkiller Base blows up 5 planets at once. This was generally seen as ridiculous and a flagrant disregard for the laws of physics. The reason the writers chose to include a scene like this was to raise the stakes beyond that of the Death Star, one of the most easily recognizable objects from the original trilogy. But what the writers of the original Star Wars understood was that you can't just blow up a planet. It means nothing to the audience because no one can really comprehend the scale of it. You just see a rock getting destroyed. You don't see all the individual billions of people incinerating. No, A New Hope gave us 2 characters to show the stakes. Princess Leia, a citizen of the planet in question, and Obi-Wan Kenobi, who felt the massive loss of life through the Force. By giving us a small group of people who are directly impacted by the global stakes, we have a reference point for how high or low they truly are. The moment in Force Awakens is brushed off because we have no one who is directly impacted. We see an attempt to show people on one of the planets right before it's destroyed, but it only lasts a few seconds. Now, time spent in establishing the stakes isn't actually that important. What is important is connecting the global stakes to individual people so we can at least understand the events in context. And this doesn't even have to be the main characters either. The barman in Hitchhiker and the girl in One Punch Man are good examples of showing the global stakes through individuals. The Force Awakens attempted to raise the global stakes by outdoing its predecessor and raised it into absurdity without a human connection, thus nullifying any stakes at all. And it's not the only one to do this. The Dragon Ball series is infamous for this, as are most shonen anime that go on for long enough. I mean, you could blow up a planet back in the middle of Dragon Ball Z and now we're 2 whole series away and in multiverse territory. Another side effect of power creep and endlessly raising global stakes. Just look at recent Marvel movies. They've done the same thing. That's not to mention the incredibly low personal stakes because death has been rendered meaningless and there is now no risk even in the face of dying. Action stories are admittedly the ones that have the trickiest time with global stakes, because you always want more explosions and cool fights, not less. So how do you raise stakes without falling into power creep and absurdly high scales? You do what Dawntrail is doing. You pull back and you focus on personal stakes to drive the story. Now, at the beginning of the video, I asked a question. Did you figure out the answer? Toy Story, Pride and Prejudice, John Wick. There are almost no global stakes. The stakes are completely personal. If Woody and Buzz failed to get back to Andy, nothing would happen. Andy would be sad for a bit, but maybe his mom would just get him new toys. It's easy to forget this because we have come to care so much about the main characters. In Pride and Prejudice, if Elizabeth and Darcy never marry, who will it affect? Maybe Darcy will keep being an asshole. Maybe Elizabeth's family won't marry up and will be left on the lower end of the landed gentry. But that's it? It's just two families. In John Wick, more people would live if John didn't go out for revenge. Don't forget, the whole movie happened because of a dog and a car. But we become invested in John's success because we see very clearly just how much that puppy meant to him. It doesn't matter the scale because we will end up caring as long as we are given reason to care. I think this is the direction Dawntrail is headed in, the same direction that led Heavensward and Shadowbringers. The direction of lower global stakes and higher personal stakes. And I'm really looking forward to it.